Hello, in this episode we'll be taking a dumpster dive into Japan's rubbish sorting system, why there's a lack of bins, and I'll even give you a couple of tips at the end if you do decide to come to Japan on how to get around these problems. To begin, I'll start talking about Japan's rubbish sorting system, at least specific to the area that I live. Each area has their own regulations, but there's going to be some sort of commonality across the board. I also have to say that even after I've lived here for so many months, I am still struggling to try and wrap my head around this. It is a bit of a point of contention between my wife and I, because she often has to tell me off if I put rubbish in the wrong bag.
So my wife has just asked me to help her out with separating the rubbish for the next couple of days. Oh dear.
But it is just more than colours, there's quite a bit to it. For example, any of your burnable items like food scraps, tissues or anything that can go up in flames has to go in the red bags. And then you have the blue bag, which is for recyclables, such as glass, metals, and all that sort of thing. But then you have clear bags, which is also for other types of recyclables. And then there's another bag for things like cardboard. In Australia and the UK, it was a bit more straightforward. You had your standard general waste bin, your recycling bin, and then also sometimes your garden waste bin. There wasn't as much of an expectation to wash your rubbish as it is in Japan. In Japan, you actually have to wash your rubbish before putting it into each and every bag. I actually talked to some of my friends about this back in Australia, and I asked them, did you ever need to wash your rubbish? Because I clarified with my mum. I said, are we meant to wash our rubbish? She said, yeah. But then I asked some of my friends, and who are also slack bastards, and they never wash their rubbish. Of course, now I try and make an effort and actually try and wash my rubbish before putting it in the bag. I promise I'm trying to do my part now. The other thing is, in Australia or the UK, you technically could just throw all of your rubbish into the wheelie bin without bagging it up. Of course, it'd end up smelling like a bit of a shit pile. In Japan, you have to pay for your red bags and your blue bags, and they come in different sizes and different prices. Some of them can be 200 yen, some of them can be 500 yen. You can buy these bags from either the local grocery store or you can buy them from your local chemist. And in Japan, you have to take your rubbish out on the morning of a specific day. For example, Monday will be burnable waste, Wednesday will be soft plastic, and then on Friday it'll be hard plastic. And if you don't put it out on the right day, you're going to get some bad looks from your neighbours, and even to the potential of it just not getting picked up anyway. Even though there's a cost of having to pay for the bags, it's pretty much a piss in the wind in comparison to how much we would have to pay rent back in Australia. For example, here we pay about $350 a month for rent, whereas in Australia you'd pay $350 every week for rent. It's just night and day. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, Luke, why didn't you just do the old sneaky beaky and in the night time run out and just take some of your rubbish and put it into some of the park bins or something like that? Which leads me on to the next part. Some of you have probably heard, or if you've been to Japan, you've probably wondered, why is it so bloody hard to find a bin in Japan? It's literally like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Well, there's actually a couple of reasons for it. In the 90s, people used to do that. Once the government had actually introduced fees for rubbish collection in Japan, people would actually take their rubbish out to any bins that they could find and put them in there so they didn't have to pay for rubbish collection. But to combat that, the government actually started removing bins from the areas so people weren't able to do that, all in the name of fairness, I guess, so that everybody was paying their way. In 1995, there was a cult leader called Shoko Asahara who orchestrated some plans to release nerve gas into various different train stations throughout Tokyo. As a result, the government decided to actually reduce the bins in the area. I'm going to assume it's because some of the actual nerve gas was hidden inside those bins, and so that's one of the reasons why the government decided to reduce those bins, to reduce the potential for future terrorist attacks. It's now deeply rooted in Japanese culture to actually take your rubbish home with you, or to collectively, the collectivism of Japan is to keep your local area clean. And I see, Japanese people, they do pick up their dog poo. I can't say the same for a lot of the time in Australia or in the UK, because I have been a victim of having poo in my shoe.
So as you can see, after walking the perimeter of the park, there's pretty much no bins at all here, which is really surprising. Even my walk coming to the park, there was no bins either. So again, very surprising.
There's also another thing called broken window mindset. Basically that posits that if you have a broken window or multiple broken windows within an area, there will be an increase in crime. And so by having bins in an area, if the government are unable to pick up that rubbish, it'll actually increase people's incentivism to actually throw rubbish on the ground because they cannot put the rubbish in the bins in the first place. And then finally, it's about efficiency. Less bins means less litter for the government to have to pick up, and interestingly enough, it's also, well, it's not really interesting, but it's also a money point of contention as well. It costs such a lot of money to keep the streets clean. But once again, I'd be lying if I said I never saw any rubbish strewn along the pavements or along the bankings of a river in Japan, but from what I've seen, it is a lot better than what I've seen in Australia, such as broken glass, and also in the UK, which when I was younger was dog poo ridden. And finally, I promise you some bonus tips if you decide to come to Japan, whether you come to live or if you're just coming for a visit. I recommend downloading your community chart, such as this one. And if your community chart is in Japanese, I highly recommend downloading Google Lens and using that to translate some of the information on the chart so you know which bins or which bags you need to put your rubbish in. The communal charts will be different on each area. So I wouldn't be able to give you this communal chart because it's likely to be different in the area that you live. I highly recommend that you get a little magnetic whiteboard and stick it on your fridge and timetable the days when the rubbish will be picked up, or schedule it into your calendar. I actually stick mine on the fridge and I can see the days in which I need to take the rubbish out. That is my job in this house. If you're out and about and you've just bought food from a stand or a van or something like that, go back to the actual store and ask them if they'll take your rubbish. If you're lucky, sometimes they will actually take the rubbish back from you and dispose of it for you. That saves you having to take it back to your hotel room or taking it back to your house. I should say, as much as you probably don't want to do this, it is part of Japanese collectivism to try and do the right thing and at least do as the Japanese do in that sense. And worst case scenario out of all this is you are going to get some funny looks from your neighbours if you don't actually do the right thing. Also, it can get to the point where the council just, if you put the wrong bag out on the wrong day, they're not going to pick up your rubbish for you. Again, you're going to get some alienation or you're going to get some pushback from your neighbours, so it's best to just do the right thing. Try and learn it. I can't say too much because I'm still struggling. I still have to ask my wife to help me out with this because clearly I'm a muppet. I should mention that literally yesterday I read an article that in some prefectures they are actually introducing bins again, and that's because of the influx of tourists since the doors have opened back up since COVID. A lot of foreigners are not adhering to the rules. Please guys, if you do come to Japan, please do your part and try and tidy up after you. Considering we've had so many of these muppets that have been sent to prison after causing so much strife in Japan, they're making a bad name for us, especially people that want to come to Japan and do the right thing. So some places are actually incorporating new bins. Some of these bins have compactors in them which will compact the rubbish down to 1/5 of the size. Japan is also opening up the option for people to contribute towards cleaning up the areas by donation. I don't have the link for you unfortunately, but that's just something that I read. To sum it all up, I'm still struggling with trying to get some of this right. I hope this has actually provided you with some insight as to the bag sorting in Japan. You now have a better idea of why there's no bins in Japan, and I've also provided you with some of those bonus tips. Please rewatch them if you've forgotten. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe if you want to watch more videos. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.
So I've just tried my first attempt at wrapping it up, and as you can see, it's absolutely shit. So I've already been told off, and so my wife's going to show me how to do it properly. So my wife has completely shown me up now because she's just done it, and as you can see, it's pretty much perfect. So clearly I need to go back to school because I can't even tie proper knots. So I've just done my second attempt, and as you can see, not too shabby. I'm not a complete muppet after all. And third time's a charm, just done another one. And that's not right, is it?